Okay, how you doing today?
Doing great, sir.
All right, so what we're going to work on today are some push-ups. I know it's one of everybody's favorite things to do. Okay, so what we want to do is work on posture first. And we're going to start so that everybody who's beginning with the push-up, maybe not having done them before, will have some skills to be able to develop and work towards getting the best push-up possible. Okay. So let's do this. Why don't we just start? We'll start with you. Just go and face it this way. Just go down into a push-up position. Okay. Now go ahead and put your knees down. Okay. Now see. As you put your knees down, that's ideally where I would want people to get to, but that's a starting point because you can pop up on your toes, okay? And then we can see that your back is straight here. That's what we're looking for, right? But put your knees down. Now bring your knees forward a little bit. More, until you're almost like straight up and down with your legs. So we're going to start here because this way, what we're going to accomplish is an understanding about where to put the body.
Okay.
And the idea is you want your chest to be between your thumbs, right?
Okay.
So, in other words, instead of putting my head between, right? My head between, I'm putting my chest down. Now, stop. Okay. Now, I only want you to go about halfway, maybe not even quite as far as you did, just do about 3 of them like that. So that's pretty good. So you've got that centeredness, right? And that's where some people may need to start.
Okay.
Now, I want you to go all the way down and touch your chest onto the ground with your hands on the outside of your chest. So your thumbs are right in. Okay. Do a couple. Okay, so that's significantly harder, right? And that's what we want to figure out where that point of reference to develop it is. In other words, you are comfortable doing a push-up. Doing that, all of a sudden, even that's a little bit different than normal. The key is we want to learn how to use the pectoral muscles. As we talked about before, thinking about how the shoulders move, how you move the rhomboid muscles, adjusting the shoulder, that whole thing. So, now, with that in mind, I want you to go in between the 2 points and find out where your spot is and just freeze right there. So just go to that point where it feels like, okay, just stay right there for a second. So that's pretty nice. Your arms are just about level with the floor. Okay, so that's really good. And that's an ideal thing that we're looking for a push-up.
Okay.
So just do about 3 more of those. Okay. Now, one of the things that happens when we're doing a push-up like this is you're going to have an arching in your back just because of the way that you're going down.
Okay.
And by doing that, it supports you and it allows you to focus on just using arm and chest strength. But it eliminates that core that we've talked about before, right? You're not really having to use core muscles. You're focused on these. And that's why you could feel it because it was not your core that was engaging, it was really just your chest. I mean, as I do this, if I go down there's a point where that core is engaged, but for the most part, right in here, all of this is really focused on the chest, right?
Okay.
And yeah, the shoulders are engaged, the arms are engaged as well, so the triceps and shoulders. But mostly what we want to do is learn how to use the chest. This is the part where, especially for women doing push-ups, they always find it difficult to do, and it's because we haven't trained the chest muscles to do the job.
Right.
That's why, the other day when we were talking about all of those different things that we're doing with the core, it's like you need to have this strong so that you can focus on this, but this is the way that we learn how to focus on the chest.
Okay.
Did you have a question?
I do, because the wrist, a lot of times,
Right.
it's uncomfortable, and I've regularly seen people do that.
And that's that's a good thing to do for some folks.
Okay.
Sometimes that's a difficult thing. This is where some apparatus come into play, where you can actually get little bars that you can put down on the floor, and then you're putting the pressure into the palm.
Okay.
It still has the wrist slightly bent, but it's not as great, so that's an option.
Okay.
You can do something similar to that by having like a book. It would have to be a pretty thick couple of books, you know, and you can kind of simulate that so that your wrists aren't cracked back all the way, because this is hard if you're not comfortable with that.
Okay.
But to that end, it's a really good point. Stretching and working the wrist. So just put your hands down on the ground like this. So this will help to get some flexibility
Okay.
into your hand. Can you feel that in the back of your hand?
Yes.
Right? So that opens that up. So you might start with this. I mean, I know guys that actually do push-ups like this.
Oh, wow.
I'm not one of those guys.
No.
But
I
now,
would recommend that. That seems a lot.
I don't know the validity of that,
Right.
but I know people do strange things. So, and somebody who's doing that, please send me a video. I'd love to see it, and tell me about how you do it, because it's not something I've ever attempted, but I have seen it done.
Okay.
But my point here is just the reference of flexibility, and you know, this is just something you can do to create that flexibility into your wrist,
Okay.
and rolling your wrist around, getting that full range of motion so that you've got the up and down and the forward and back, and being able to roll it all the way around will help you to know what your wrist can do. I mean, you got 7 little bones in here, and they all are supposed to stay together and, you know, and work together. And sometimes they don't, and that's when you get pressure and problems. This is good, and you know, if we were doing those karate type push-ups, the focus ideally would be on these 2 knuckles, right? And that's also because it tends to be in line with this bone that comes right up to this point in your elbow. So that's the ideal. And, however, what I see a lot of people doing here is this. And that's not so bad, because as you move, if you do this, it allows you to adjust. It's just not from the punching point quite as powerful. And this creates that bone alignment going up and down.
Okay.
But that can be hard on your hands internally. If you're doing the karate program, of course, we talk about a fist and how to make a fist, and you want those fingers wrapped up, and you know that creates that awareness. But it can be very hard to do. So you might not do as many push-ups just because it's difficult.
Right. I've just seen that done and wanted to know if there was any.
So another thing that I highly recommend, and when we get into more push-ups, we'll talk about this, is different hand positions, and that will accommodate different ways that the muscles are working, right? So if I have my hands out like this, all kinds of different muscles start engaging as I do that, but it also takes some of the pressure off of the wrist. So if you do that in conjunction with using fist or using some of the bars, that's exactly, we were on the same wavelength. That's the ones that I was thinking about. Those are probably the most versatile in that they allow you to have that feeling. Now, if you were unable to do push-ups, there are other ways that we can do that, right? And we're going to get to that a little bit later. We'll do some things like dips, which don't require that kind of work. But we want to learn how to do a proper push-up. And mostly the reason why people have problems is because of body mechanics and just not understanding how to use the chest, right? So let's just do a couple more. And go ahead and start with your knees, right? Yeah, go a little bit further back. There you go. So now we've created a distance which isn't quite as far as if you went up onto your toes, but that's good. Now go ahead and bring your chest down to about the same level as you did before. Make sure it stays in between your thumbs. Okay, and then come back. Let's do about 3 of those. Okay, you sit up. So how did that feel in relation to the last set that you did?
Better.
Better. So how so?
I felt less strain on the sternum.
Right.
It brought it out
So part of the reason for that is that now you're engaging the core, right? And this is what we want to find out. We want to find out where the core works. And different people will feel it at different points. For you, that's good to know. So you can kind of see the difference, right?
Yes, it is.
So now with that in mind, go back to that same position. Okay, so we're about there. Now this time, go all the way down and touch your chest to the floor. Again, remain between the thumbs as you go down.
Okay.
Just do about 3 of them there. Okay, a little bit of shaking going on
A
there.
little bit. I'm noticing it in my joint, in the shoulders.
In the joint, or is it in the
Well-
muscle in the shoulder?
I'm feeling it when I get to this point upon coming back up.
Okay.
I'm feeling more strain, more
On
on
one
one
side.
side than the other, but I'm
Okay.
feeling it more on one side.
Okay, so that's it. You know, we all have weak points,
Mhm.
right? So as you look at those weak points, you want to say, okay, well, that's obviously something I don't want to do. There's a thing called pain, and there's a thing called discomfort. We do not want to experience pain. Say no to pain.
No pain.
Say yes, discomfort. Good. So realistically, that's probably too far to go, but that's why we want to experiment and find out what that is.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
Because if I'm going down and I go to this point and this works for me, then this is the way that I want to do it, right?
Okay.
But then you start thinking about the next phase of that. And you were doing this pretty good, but I want to point this out because it happens. If you look right now, I've got my back arched, even in this position,
Okay,
right?
I see that.
So I want to tuck my hips underneath me. So as I go down, all of a sudden, now that changes. By tucking my hips underneath me, it also engages my core movement, right?
Okay.
You weren't really having that issue, but let's go ahead and do that again.
Okay.
And just think about that and see if that doesn't have a little bit of an effect. So tuck it in tight, there you go. So just go ahead and do about 3 of them there.
Much better.
Good. Okay, now go all the way down.
Okay.
Keep it tucked. I can see that hitch in your shoulders.
And it's the left side.
Right.
Because the right side feels like I'm constant, I almost feel like I'm coming up faster.
Pushing it to get
Yeah,
yourself up.
yeah.
Right. In order to kind of really establish this, at that point, that's too low for you right now.
Okay.
And really, you might want to consider looking at what's going on with that shoulder more specifically and find out what the problem is. But we don't want to find that point of pain, right? We want to find that you're not injuring it more.
Okay.
However, there is a point where if you work through and work past a problem, such as this is probably pretty minor, and it probably has more to do with body alignment and things. We're not going to really get into that today. But I just want you to think about how can I work through it. Well, the way to work through it is simply only go to the distance before that starts happening. So you could go a little bit further than the original point that we were at, and the reason that we would want to do that is to create that sense of pressure, feel that stressing, right? And I don't know if we talked about this before, I think we have, but maybe not on this video, the difference between distress and eustress, right?
Right.
So the word distress, if you think of it this way, stress is what most people think of when under stress, right? But there's eustress. It's like euphoria, right? It's like a euphoric sense. Well, eustress is good stress. And we're creating a sense of good stress. It's positive stress so that we can build the process of how the muscles are able to work and function. Ultimately, you want to have, as you're doing this push-up, you want to have hips tucked under. I want to go all the way down, and I want to keep that movement the same every time, right? And as I'm doing this, this is creating a sense of eustress because I can feel the stress in my chest, the core is engaged, and now I'm getting benefit, right? And
So
once
it's a good burn.
it's the good burn, right? So that's key.